Our man Will Z. National Media's Will Z from SI. Excited to have our man Will on.
I asked. No, we'll save it actually for later in the conversation. But I do want to ask both of you guys
Don't make
Intrigued.
it wait. Yeah.
something. Yeah. Well, first of all, shout out legends or the GOAT legends in the building in the chat. Shout out legends.
We was
Nice.
watching the Draymond Green
Yeah.
video earlier.
Hey,
salute,
legends,
fellas.
legends.
Salute.
See if you could get that Doug Christie, Steve Kerr joint, man.
Yeah,
Come
get
on,
that.
man.
Get
What
that.
they was talking about.
Yeah, get that.
So I had a joke, and I was just kind of joking.
Well, I know what Steve was saying. Flop. Like, sit your ass down. What you doing?
Steve.
Tongue in cheek, but just a little truth to it as well. I just think it is what it is. I said, I tweeted out last night. I said it was a rough week for the roster is the problem gang this past week. It was a rough week. Now, do I think that the team needs to add to the roster? Absolutely, I do. Absolutely. But now I'm starting to wonder, and maybe you guys have. I don't know how this happens.
I don't think it was, though.
What?
I don't think it was a rough week for the roster as the problem crowd.
Well, it went 4-0.
Yeah, and the big dogs played like big dogs. What you got was Trey.
Well, Keon.
Well, so that's kind of the footnote to all of this that we haven't spent nearly enough time talking about. Shout out Keon Ellis, who started for Keegan Murray and then started for De'Aaron Fox. So you had Keon in the starting group, and Trey kind of carrying the load on the bench.
Yep.
Like Kevin was great last night, but he wasn't Friday.
Right.
Devin and Will, like you kind of see it.
Yep.
Like he scored points yesterday, but he didn't exactly shoot the ball great. Like they were up 30. It's like, hey kid, get your stuff off. Like that's cool, but you kind of see it with him. It's just not there yet.
Right. But the whole premise was always like, and I would always say is like, just said, yeah, you need
so
some
you're
upgrades.
Good.
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
But I'm saying where they were at, 6 games under 500 was not because the roster was bad. There was something else going on because you got enough to have a 3-1 week. Like you don't need to go get Cam Johnson to have a 3-1 week or not have a 5-game losing streak or be 6 games under 500. That's all I ever said.
That was always the case.
Yeah,
100%.
That's all I ever said. But
100%.
The premise of it all also was Trey's playing well again.
Yeah.
We all like what we see from Devin Carter. How are you going to go get somebody?
Yep.
Yeah, you have to determine if what you're going to go get is better than what you're giving up.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It does feel like this is the healthiest they've been all year, and maybe that skews the conversation a little too.
Well, which is crazy because the best player is out.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're right. Yeah, it's been, and I think it was Hammer that tweeted last night. De'Aaron was the last man standing. He was the only one who hadn't missed, games through the first 30 something, and now it's his turn.
Yep.
And then again, man, shout out to Keon who stepped into that role last night with De'Aaron. Shout out to Malik who I thought was brilliant last night. But Keon, starting for 2 different players at 2 different positions over the course of the last 2 games shows why. And this is what we've talked a lot about. Keon is a bit of a black mark on Mike Brown's record. Like you had him, you nitpicked or you bitched and complained or whatever it was, and you just let him sit.
Yeah.
And that sucks. It sucks for everybody involved. It sucks for Mike. Yep. It sucked for Keon, but Doug clearly believes in Keon Ellis. And Will, that's what you wrote about most recently. Is we've been talking a lot about Doug's impact on this basketball team.
Yeah.
You wrote specifically about the numbers that we've seen with Doug Christie as the head coach so far.
Yeah. So 2 recent articles. The one last night, Doug was talking post game about how he's just been preaching, play together, play for each other. And it really feels like they're doing that more. It's weird because at the time with Mike Brown, it felt like that was still how they were playing. They were trying to move the ball, but it just feels different now. So looking at some numbers, and Damien, you always talk about the 30 assist mark. In the last 5 games, they've had 31, 32, 24, 25, and 38 assists. That's good for an average of 30 per game, which would rank 3rd in the season rankings. Under the first 31 games, they were averaging 25.5 assists. That's good for 17th in the season rankings. And I'm pulling up now to double check, but it's not just. I remember at some point I was looking at potential assists too, which are like any shot that would be an assist if it's made. And the Kings were pretty low in that as well. So doing this live on the season, they're at 48.8. In the last 5 games, they're at 50.4. So honestly, it's not that much of a difference. Maybe it is. They're just making more shots, but a slight uptick there. So quick math in my head, probably around 47 ish range for the first 31 games. So slight uptick in potential assists too, but just the numbers, the eye test matches what the numbers are showing, that they're moving the ball better. They're now, I think, 6-1 or 6-3 in games with 30 or more assists. And that's just when they play that way, they play so well because you're constantly making the opponents have to decide who they want to guard and who they want to rotate to.
Yeah. And that's something that I always looked at as a plus and a potential problem for others when you got Malik Monk and De'Aaron Fox. That's why I was kind of an advocate for having those guys start, because you got Fox, Monk combining with DeRozan. Like, somebody's going to have, in theory, a mismatch. Somebody's going to have a favorable matchup. And I know De'Aaron didn't play last night, but it seems like that's something that they've been able to take advantage of the last week or so. Just having more firepower on the offensive end than more teams, especially the teams they're playing being injured, have to be able to deal with.
And then the other numbers are looking at the pace. It's, again, always a hot topic in Sacramento, is pushing the pace. So this was before the last game. So the numbers are slightly different, but the premise is still there. First 31 games, the pace of 99.43, which would rank 17th in the league rankings. In the 4 games following, 101.88, which would rank 7th. But it's not just that total number. It's kind of how they're taking their shots and using the pace, but not relying on it. Looking at the shot clock breakdown of field goals with 24 to 22 seconds left on the clock, so super early in the shot clock, they were taking 2.5 per game. That's up to 3.5. And in the 22 to 18 seconds remaining, went from 12.8 to 14.5. And then the other really telling one that I thought is under Doug, they, in the shot clock remaining with 7, make sure I'm in the right spot, with 7 to 4 seconds left, so late in the shot clock, goes from 35.8% to 44.1%. Kennedy wants to say hi. And 0 to 4 seconds left, they're shooting 55.6% on their shots with 4 or less seconds left on the shot clock. So they're being, I think, patient in their offense. So they're really doing either one or the other. They're pushing the ball and getting good looks early in the shot clock, or they're taking their time in the half-court sets and getting a good look later in the shot clock. There's not as much in the middle. Obviously, they're still shooting, but the field goal percentages are better on the bookends than they were under Mike Brown. It could be small sample size. That obviously is just 4 games, but something that stood out to me a little.
And tell Kennedy it's okay, we're good again, so she doesn't have to cry. She sounded like Kings fans last week. Like, Kennedy, it's okay, we're good now. We're back.
Yeah.
And I'm not asking you. We're having a conversation here. I don't expect you to know the answer to this. None of us know the answer to this. You just laid out the numbers. You laid out the statistical evidence of what they're doing. The question is, like, how? Why? Do you watching them? I mean, the word that came up so many times yesterday was some form of the word like joy or happy or fun, like that. It was some, DeMar specifically used the word joy. Kevin was talking about playing loose and free, and like, do you is that what you're seeing when you watch them? Is just everything is just like a little bit more relaxed, and therefore the ball is kind of zipping around everywhere, and you're seeing these guys a little bit more comfortable in their shots?
I think so. Don't know exactly why, but when Hannah and I have talked about it, just like watching the games, we'll just sit and talk. And our kind of working theory is that maybe Mike Brown, we know he was such a detailed planner and came in super prepared. And maybe it was just a little too much. And it starts to get in people's heads where you have to do something perfect. Like Mike Brown is probably demanding near perfection at this point. Like to take a step and be a championship contender, you have to be perfect. And that's a lot to think about as you're playing. And maybe if you mess up, you get a little sidetracked and let that thought process creep in. And I know Doug has simplified the offense and defense. It looks pretty similar to me, but the results are different. So I don't know what or why it's changing. It's weird. I would like it's weird. It feels weird to be this early into the Doug Christie era and think, "Oh yeah, that was the right move." Because at the time it seemed like Mike wasn't doing very much wrong. Maybe it's small sample size, maybe it's something that's just clicked. But Doug, I mean, from a viewership perspective, there's joy exuding from him through the TV.
Except when he's about to whoop someone's ass.
Well, there's those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that's just fantastic.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah,
that's when it's even better.
Yeah.
Watching that.
Yeah.
But I hate to keep harping on this point, man, but it's just more about, at least it seems this way. I'm not in the locker room, obviously, but it seems like it's just very empowering playing for Doug Christie. Do what you do. Do what you do. You got a good shot early in the shot clock, man, let that thing fly. If not, we'll keep it moving and then we'll get a great shot. But just know that whatever you do, I want you to do it with confidence. I want you to do it believing in yourself and not looking over your shoulder. And I just, as we get further and further away and we hear different stories and stuff like that, I think that was a real issue of, like, if I mess up, if I'm Keon Ellis and I mess up, I might be in garbage time the next day. I remember specifically it was the Jazz game when they didn't even have people there. People were hurt left and right. And Keon Ellis, there was a mix-up with him and Orlando Robinson, and there was a turnover in the half court. And you could see Keon, like, in the moment looking at Orlando Robinson like, no, like, you did wrong. Keon essentially got blamed for it, didn't play the rest of the game. And I think he was his minutes were in question. He might have played the next game because they played the Hawks. But just little stuff like that, right? Like, I can't imagine Doug Christie telling those guys, like, hey, if you turn the ball over twice, just sit with me for the rest of the night. Like, I just can't imagine that. And that leads to a little more free-flowing type of play.
And we saw last night, is it when Doug was saying for Malik that he's going to go out and be confident and do what he does, and he's encouraging him to do that, work through the mistakes. And Monk has been phenomenal over the last 5 games, like 22 points, 7 rebounds, shooting well from everywhere. So
I wrote one of those quotes down, Will. He said, and this is Doug, he told Malik, dude who's been in the league for a while, believe in yourself. I believe in you. That's what he said in his post game last night.
It's perfect.
And look, all the things that Mike Brown was saying or the way he was going about it, I'm not here to say it was wrong. I think it was just wrong for this group of players. That's it. Like, he could go to,
and perhaps the Lakers.
That too. But he could go to Memphis.
Didn't work for Kobe.
No. He could go to Memphis and it worked perfect. Like
Mm-hmm.
they'll react to that a certain way, or
But
whoever. But for this group, he didn't read the room with
yeah,
this group
and so
and
with
what
all
would get the best out of them.
due respect to Mike, that's something you have to know. Like we've talked about this. Not, we talked about this a lot in relation to his relationship with Malik. You can't have that type of exchange with everyone. The way him and Malik and Mike were, you can't do that with everybody. Some people respond really, really well to that. It appears that those two always did. Not everybody responds like that. You can't cuss and scream and yell at everybody. Not everyone responds to stuff that way. And I think great coaches learn the tenor of their locker room and then spend time learning the individuals in the locker room. There's a collective way that you could teach, and there's an individual way that you can teach. And I think it appears Mike may have struggled with that a little bit. Because
I
it
know
felt
I would
like
shrivel up
it feels
well,
like guys were checked
that's
out.
pause.
Well,
Yeah.
very good.
Call myself if like that was the like I don't do well with confrontation and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
just knowing like me personally, and yeah, it'd be tough.
But like Doug is here now. Doug is doing his thing, and he's got his work cut out for him. He's got
Yeah.
his work cut out for him with trying to get these guys back in a position where they're thinking playoffs. And thankfully, there's a lot of other teams, a good number of teams in the West who have their own struggles.
Yeah. Like the Warriors.
The Warriors as is. It's always easy to look at a team a certain way when they're going through a tough spell. And just like the Kings, like a win will happen and it'll turn everything around. But it's hard to see the Warriors.
Well, they just got worse. With the Kuminga thing,
Mhm.
it got worse for them.
It's hard to see them making the top
Yeah.
10.
Well, I'd hate to see that, man. I tell you, I just hate to see it. Hey, can we show love to one more person before you get out of here, William? And Trey Lyles has been spectacular.
Oh, phenomenal. Like him, they needed some scoring off the bench so badly. And to have Trey come up and step up like he has, and whether it be just him getting in shape, like Malik said, but whatever it is, he has filled kind of that scoring void that Monk left off the bench. And it's so versatile as a forward / center, and something no one else really on the roster that can do what he does. And I think that's why him not playing well impacted the team so much, because he's the only like true stretch big that they have. Sabonis obviously shooting the ball well from beyond the arc, but that's still pretty low volume. Looking at the last 5 games, I always like to look at the on-off net ratings. Trey Lyles is a plus 32.2 for the last 5 games. So the Kings, when he's on the court, have a 25.3 net rating. When he's off the court, negative 6.9. So second place, no surprise, Keon Ellis. But Trey, he's working himself out of the universal deal, if not already has.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm.
the new universal deal.
A good call.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Bagley
good
and Buddy
callback.
are gone.
Yeah.
And Will, maybe you've seen this too. I want to bring this up while you're here. You know who else I really like to see out there, and I don't know if it lines up with maybe he was playing the entire time. I don't want to say it's a Keon Ellis situation, but man, Alex Lynn has been solid. When Alex Lynn is out there, at least what I see from him, and maybe my expectations. But when he's out there, you talk about rim protection and a big body in the paint. He gives you that. He gives you good 10 to 12 minutes a night, it feels like. I don't know if the numbers back it up, but I feel like he's been solid. I know last night he was like minus something bad. But I don't know. I like Alex Lynn out there.
I like Len too. It's been a tough year for him. I think the advanced number, so same number as the high number for Trey. Len is sitting at a negative 48.7. So not great. Again, that's just the last 5 games. But that I think is kind of one of their weakest spots to me, is the backup center, like the true backup center position. And I don't know. Len has been so effective over the last few years, and these exact same numbers. He's always been like super high. The Kings' defensive rating when he plays is always plummeted, which is good. But this year, it just hasn't clicked with him out there. And I don't know why, because it's the same group of players. But something about it isn't working quite as much as it used to. And maybe now that he's getting kind of that consistent playing time, because it's been like Mike Brown teetered between him, Orlando Robinson, Isaac Jones. Doug it's Len. Like, that's your backup center. So maybe him getting that consistent look will even things out a little and help them be better when he's on the court. But that's becoming, I think, one of obviously the wing spot to upgrade, but the backup center spot, I think, coming into the trade deadline.
Great stuff as always, William. This is the last basketball game for a month, I think.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
So we'll connect later on this week when the Kings resume basketball activities against the Celtics.
Awesome.
We appreciate you, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, guys.